Hello, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to How's It Going, a casual real estate talk show where you can learn something new. My name is Leo Young, and this week I want to talk about how to be your best self. So to do that, I'm bringing in my current manager at Coldwell Banker. He's been in real estate for over 30 years, first as a realtor, then working his way up to a manager. And he has played an important part in building up successful realtors' careers all throughout, mine included. So without further ado, please join me in welcoming Leif Rosseland.
Hey, thanks, Leo.
How are you?
Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
Definitely.
Appreciate the introduction. Yeah, I've been doing a lot longer than I think most people think. I was licensed back in 1987.
Wow.
I listed and sold up till 2001 out in the central Massachusetts marketplace. And so quite a few years of that. Got into the management role in 2001
Mhm.
and stayed in the management role until I think it was 2015. And then I became the regional vice president for Coldwell Banker. And then last year decided to get back into sort of what I really like, and that's
Mhm.
really interacting, not so much on the corporate end, but interacting with agents inside offices. And I'm sort of a real estate junkie, so I like to get into properties. I just
Mhm.
came from a broker's open house, and I didn't
Nice.
have to go, but I like seeing what our clients have that they're trying to sell and how we're trying to help them move forward. So it's been quite the ride so far. But I still got a little left in the gas tank.
Yeah, that's awesome to hear. And I'd love to talk more about that once we go into the questions too, Leif.
Sure.
Now, just as all of you know at home, this show and the information that we cover is for informational and educational purposes only. So before making any material decisions, consult the appropriate professional. With that being said, too, as you know, every episode we have a featured charity that you can donate to. So if you feel like you've gained something useful out of today's episode, I urge you to donate to the charity. And Leif, would you mind introducing this week's charity to the audience?
Sure. Sure. So for years, our firm here in New England has been a part of an entity called the Home for Little Wanderers. And it's an Eastern Massachusetts organization or operation that I believe, it's got a Boston base and also a Walpole base. But it provides like comprehensive continuing of services for young kids, for children and young adults who are at risk, basically coming from home environments that aren't so pleasant, that many of us probably have not had
Mhm.
the I don't want to say luck, because it's not luck, had the time or had the history of being able to experience. So it's a great charity. Um, uh, to those who run it, to the professionals that run it, having to deal with those types of situations, especially in young children, they're the godsend to the earth. They really are. Not wanting those children or young adults to be left out, and to give them a chance, to have great careers like a lot of us have had in this in the real estate business.
Definitely. And what a great explanation for that. So I'll leave a link down in the video below. Please do consider donating. And yeah, so without further ado, let's go into the questions.
Sounds good.
So I wanted to continue off the point that you mentioned earlier, Leif. So you mentioned that you were the regional vice president for a while, and then you sort of transitioned to this more hands-on managerial role last
Yeah.
year.
Yep.
So how is it going so far?
Well, I hope from your perspective, well, honestly, some might be thinking, jeepers, why would you go from that kind of position, back into several different offices? And believe it or not, I probably And this is a good thing. I probably work longer and harder just being in 2 offices versus 22 where I have multiple other managers, because I try to get knee deep
Mhm.
in your real estate lives. So I think so far so good. I've been in Weston and Lincoln since November of last year. So as we were starting to get ramped up and rolled up ready for the spring market,
Mhm.
the unfortunate events of COVID hit, which have sort of been quite an adjustment for management, for this company as a whole, obviously for society, and certainly for real estate agents who, a lot of them, this is what they do. This is their career. This is how they pay their bills.
Definitely. Yeah, it's been quite an interesting transition. And so just from your perspective, from the managerial perspective, how has COVID been affecting the industry and what you're being seeing so far?
Well, I can tell you this, since doing it since the 80s, I've never experienced something quite like this, where I've been through different economic swings. I've been through, there was disasters, whether it was weather related or environmental disasters, whether it's nationwide or local, been through those types of things. I don't think I've ever experienced a time where what we do is face to face. In our industry, we don't have a product. Our clients are the ones who have the product. And so for us to be it's almost like a bowler not having a bowling ball.
Mhm.
Honestly, but you still have to knock down pins. So how are you going to
Right.
do that?
Right.
And so literally in the beginning, back in the mid-March, when states, especially in this particular state, started to have fairly severe protocols and requirements for being out in society, we had to close our offices. We had to take preventative measures that limited the amount of exposure that any agents would have, certainly any of our clients who were the most important. Those are the ones who pay us. So for us to kind of streamline that and figure out, okay, so how moving forward, the only way that we probably can help someone find a buyer for their house, and then for that buyer to get into the house, and then for that buyer to close on that house, I think in our world, we end up concluding, and we concluded this, I think, some time ago when the internet switch was turned on in 1994, that we're like an integral part to this whole equation.
Right.
So someone has to see it. They've got to see the design of the rooms, how far it is from school, where the sun comes up. All those types of things cannot really be interpreted by a photograph.
Right.
So we put a lot of measures into place over the course of the last 2 months, 2.5 months, as you experienced too, Leo,
Mhm.
with sort of doing it a different way, and sort of telling our clients that the old way of looking at property or having open houses is going to have to change dramatically. And I really
Right.
don't see that changing all that much into going into the near or even the far future. Sort of a new world.
Right. Definitely. And sort of on that point, Leif, you mentioned that since you started doing this business, or even since you've been alive, I don't think you've seen anything like this before. I don't think the world has seen anything like this before. Um, and I think with normal economic swings, like back in 2008, sure, I mean it's not a good thing, but people know how to handle it, how to address it somewhat. But this time through, it's an entirely different ball game. People are having to shift what they do. As you said, we're having to do showings virtually and having all these safety protocols and things like that. So it can definitely be disorienting to many, right?
Right. Interesting where you sort of correlated with 2008, and I know probably plenty of people who might be viewing this. You've heard this multiple times at 2008, and I went through that cycle as well. That was an economic crisis that was created pretty much by the banking industry, And I won't get into the political end of it, but that was something that was a long time coming. What we've just been through, or are still going through, and probably are going to continue to go through, has been a purposeful stop to our economy at some level for the sake of not having that personal interaction, to prevent a health crisis. So, what does that mean to individuals? What's going to happen in the future? I'm certainly not a predictor. I don't have the crystal ball. I can only sort of interpret information that I got today of what happened yesterday. And shockingly, the first couple of weeks that we were experiencing, certainly in Massachusetts, and certainly across the country, this new way of living, or altered way of living, I should say, it did not stop the buyer pool from anticipating that they still needed a house. They still needed to move from point A to point B. And I can't speak for all marketplaces, but I certainly can speak for, the Weston Lincoln marketplaces, probably the Wellesley marketplaces as well, is that those anxious buyers are still extremely motivated to find property. So we're probably in a marketplace right now, at least in these particular towns, where supply is way behind demand. That tends to make appreciation of properties escalate. Could that be a problem in the future? Certainly could be, because there's multiple stopgaps in our business when it comes to people borrowing money and banks wanting to lend the money, but they have someone called an appraiser in the middle who works for the bank, even though the buyer's paying for them. And they want to make sure that the bank, quote unquote, wants to make sure that they're getting a good investment. Mm-hmm. So while this is sort of, and I've also heard this term, Leo, this is the new normal. You know what, to me, the new normal is not going to replace the old normal. It's just going to alter it. Right. And it's, for some industries, it's going to alter it significantly. For us on this end, we have definitely been impacted, but sales, people looking at property, that has not slowed. In fact, it's picked up more. I was just looking at statistics before I came on to this podcast for some of the surrounding towns and Massachusetts. We are actually ahead of last year, and last year was a very good market, and last year did not have COVID-19 going on.
Right, and that's really interesting that you say that, because basically what people are reading in the headlines doesn't directly translate to what's happening in their local market, just because of the hyper local nature of real estate.
Yep.
So
there's no question, and you can become completely absorbed by the news these days with everything that's going on. It's hard to even concentrate. So with that said, I could see how someone who might not be in our industry is seeing what's going on out in the world, whether it's relations, whether it's police, whether it's the economy. There's still 40 million people who are collecting unemployment, and that's a real stat. So I could see how someone could see, wow, that's, there's no way anyone's doing anything out there. I don't know. I guess the way I look at it is it's horrific that many people have lost their jobs, and probably a lot not to be replaced as far as the job goes. But in our industry, the people who are out there buying property are the ones who are employed and feel pretty comfortable and confident in what they're doing. So that should tell the potential seller pool out there that it's still extremely vibrant. We can never predict, is that going to be through July, through August, through September? Couldn't tell you. I don't think there's a person on earth who could tell you, even in an election year, things going to slow? Are they going to bottom out? Are they going to flatten out? I wouldn't have thought that we would have been here on, mid to latter part of June, based on what we just experienced in the last 3 months.
Definitely. And with that being said, I mean, you're definitely right. There's a lot of change going on right now, a lot of headlines, and I think it can be disorienting to many. So Leif, do you how do you stay focused and productive during these times?
Well, it's not easy. It really isn't. I'm just a realist that, hey, I don't have all the answers. But I know when, especially us in this line of work, when outside influences start to affect us, you can either continue to let that happen, and and that's not a good element in a real estate agent's career. There's no question about that. Is that you got to somehow push forward, and so what does that mean? Definitely in the first couple of 2-3 weeks after the coronavirus started to hit our area, there was confusion amongst everyone, us, in the management or executive level, and certainly we're trying to shift information into our agent pool and into our employee pool. I think at this point in time, we've sort of settled in as to sort of the direction that we need to take. So with that, someone who's fairly organized in this business, someone who's not afraid of a calendar and putting things in a calendar and then sticking to it, those are the ones who tend to come out first. And again, I've managed hundreds and hundreds of agents over the years, and hey, we're not all wired the same, but I think regardless of whether it's with the real estate industry or the computer industry or the financial industry, continue to learn, continue to educate yourself. Our clients pay us for the knowledge that we have in our head. So that kind of stuff shouldn't stop or slow down. And if it's in a schedule and you know certain things that you have to do during the day or during the week and you stick to them, it's almost like no one would ever blow off like a hair appointment or a doctor's appointment or a nail appointment. I know they wouldn't. So it's sort of the same thing in our industry, is the things that are really hard that are the things that pay off. And those are the easy ones to say, I think I'll just push it to another day. That tends to not work. So I think just trying to stick to a schedule. I'm not perfect. I get off kilter. There's interference that happens, but trying to at least accomplish, 80% of the stuff that you sort of strive for that particular day. You can't not be successful. It just cannot not happen.
Right. So yeah, it's definitely important to be organized and disciplined during a time like this, right? Just have your own systems down and continue being persistent in whatever you're doing.
Correct. Yeah, whatever, right. It's not just about business. I've had to alter my world because I was in the gym 5 or 6 days a week. Gyms were shut down. I never would have thought that I would have been using those stretchy bands moving forward, honestly. And that's a great example of, like, I'm a gym fanatic. I'm not so sure I'm going to be going back to the gym nearly at the level that I used to because of what I've been able to alter in a workout. I'm not kidding, under my own environment, in my own basement. And I don't have to go into a locker room. I don't have to wait for a piece of equipment. It's a great example of I was forced into something that I would never have allowed to have happen. And now I'm like pretty happy with it. So change, I guess that's the moral of that one is change has, even though I was forced to do it, I'm like really happy with it. So, but change is, change, I think spelled backwards is fear.
Yeah.
I think we're taught that as little kids, right? It's a tough concept, but those who like go into that form of change all the time, those are the ones who seem to come out the winners. They really do. The ones who, nope, I'm just going to keep doing it the same way that I've always done it, whether it's a workout, whether it's business, you're probably just going to get the same results. And at some point in time, it's going to be sort of flat. So
definitely. And I think you're definitely right on that. So during this time, we've had to revisit our routines and sort of change it up and create new routines and sort of rethink our reality, whether it be working out at home or doing work a certain way. I think most of us will all recover from this whole situation. But the question is more so when and how will you recover?
Right. Agreed.
Yeah. So that's good. Now, Leaf, just on that, building on that. So, how or do you have any recommendations on how you can build the right mindset or like a positive mindset to keep you going in a time like this?
Yep. Well, and I've learned this over the years, really from not just top real estate agents, but certainly from a lot of top real estate agents, but more from like mentors that I've had in the business world. And again, I know people have probably heard this one before, but to me, it is like reality, is hang around with people of a positive attitude.
Hmm.
There is nothing worse than, I think, if you were going to say, I'm going to watch 6 hours of TV a day, and 5 3/4 of those hours is going to be the news. There is no way you can come walking out of that room being in a good mood, because news, it's hard, it's heavy. So definitely surrounding yourself or being in the same environment of people who are positive, who want to accomplish something, who see, the glass half full versus half empty. And again, I know those are all, reused, retreaded phrases and words, but I think that's what sort of keeps me going. Hey, and every day you're going to have things that are going to happen, especially in our industry where you didn't expect it. Someone doesn't hire you. A property doesn't sell that you've listed. A buyer ends up going to, open house without you. So there's a lot of scenarios that happen in our business that you'd never expect and that you would have tried to prompt not to happen, but they do.
Hmm.
And I guess any advice that I could give to anyone, it seems like the superstars in our business are the ones who, yep, you know what, they're going to, for like an hour, they're going to be aggravated. They might kick a few things. They might punch a few things, but they are not going to let that go on for more than a day, because ultimately in the end, and I say this out of like respect, is ultimately in the end, the only person who really cares is you.
Hmm.
The other person, you can tell them how bad your day was, but they got to go on into their own world. So I guess if we can remove ourselves from thinking that, I need to get all this pity, from 12,000 people out there. And if it takes a month, it takes a month. In our business, you don't have that much time. So that's how to
Definitely.
stay positive, focused, certainly educating yourself, reading,
Hmm.
whether it's market related statistics, or you got to have fun too. You always got to have, plan for
Definitely.
a vacation, plan for a
Yeah.
long weekend. If there's
Yeah.
nothing like at the end of the tunnel for you to shoot for, gosh, you just become just a workaholic, and then it's
Yeah.
not fun anymore. And then your clients end up seeing that, wow, you're not really excited about this anymore. And then, you got the fake smile on. Yeah, I am. I just haven't, had a vacation in 6 years.
Right.
So
Yeah.
stuff like that, kind of setting those goals down the pike that you're really excited to get to. And when you get to them, it's the experience is far more uplifting than if you just, were winging it.
Hmm. Yeah. That's really well said, Leif. And I think you covered a lot of information right there. And just to take a couple steps back too, I think just on when you said hanging around the positive people to have a positive attitude, I personally think that's true. And also, it doesn't have to be physical people. Like you don't have to hang around
Correct.
people physically. I mean, now we
Correct.
know to call people, to FaceTime, and do whatever. But also reading books, as you said, or watching videos from people that inspire you and that put you in the right mindset. I think that's important too.
It is. I would never have said that like 25 years ago, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the internet wasn't around that time, and the cell phones came in the big bags, so I
Mm-hmm.
didn't have all those information sources that everyone does today.
Mm-hmm.
But I think there's a lot to be said about talking to someone who's successful. And it doesn't just have to be money. It can be a myriad of different things, and the uplifting feeling you get of like, wow, I got to do something like that, or I want
Right.
to get involved in something like that. And if it is about money and making a career, I think the other thing I learned from mentors in the past is, if you really want to do well financially, do not hang around poor people.
Mm-hmm.
And again, I say that in a respectful way, is that the ones who are doing well, they have different ingredients in the recipe than the ones who aren't.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're into, and a lot of them have copied others in the past. That's what I've also found out, is that they're not reinventing these things. They're just taking bits and pieces from others who have been successful and applying it to themselves, because they didn't have it naturally with them. They sort of had to inoculate themselves with good ingredients.
Definitely.
And it takes a while. It takes a while accepting change, doing something that's very foreign to you, that's very that you struggle with, that you fail with. I mean, I fail honestly a dozen times a day, small, medium, and large. And I hope I learn from some of those things, and I don't give bad enough advice when I really fail badly, so it affects someone else. But boy, if you're not failing every day, it's almost like you're just like doing something wrong.
Right. Definitely. And just to elaborate on that too, I've heard someone else talk about this, the whole poor mentality. So like they framed it as you have to be aware of your behavior and limit the poor behavior. So things like, hey, like if your paycheck comes in and you go out and buy like a nice belt, like, you know, eat out and like go party with your friends and stuff, versus like if you save that money and you invest it towards improving yourself, your skills, and your future.
Yeah. I think our business, because of the way it financially works, you as a real estate agent are responsible for your own taxes. So what does that mean? You sort of hit the nail on the head. It's hard in the beginning when, hey, you know what, I'm just trying to get chugging along, and you know, I'm making some pay here, but I have some bills, and you forget that you're actually a business owner now. So again, I always sort of liken this to, although it's not the best correlation, is if you were going to go out and open up a Dunkin' Donuts franchise, they're going to give you the marketing part, but your job is to drive the traffic into the store and also make sure that the employees show up. If they're not showing up, the service isn't there. And you know, in the Dunkin' Donuts world, there's 2 miles up the street. That's where someone will go. It's the same sort of scenario in our business, is that you are responsible for a lot of the financial part on your own. And you're also responsible at a fairly large degree of driving the traffic in. You know, our firm, my goal on this end is to give you the right tools, or give you the right direction, and give you the right advice as to how to do that. But I'm trying to help you grow your own business. And that's the most difficult part of this industry. It's not, things aren't just handed to people. You know, you're banking on who you know and what your drive is and where you got to go, and being a realist as to how long it's going to take to get there, and hopefully tapping into someone who's been there and experienced that, so they can say, just do this, just do that. And, you know, somehow kind of mold that around your own, you know, your own way of sort of completing things.
Yeah. And it's great that you said that too, Leif, because I think in addition to real estate agents having that business owner mindset, I think it's important for everyone to have the business owner mindset, because you sort of look at your life objectively and you take accountability for it, and you ask yourself, hey, how am I doing right now? And what do I need to do to where I want to go to? And hey, here are my goals for the next quarter, the next year. And I think there's some great benefit to looking at it that way.
Yep. It's interesting. I mean, I'll just throw this out for anyone who, you know, was thinking, you know, the real estate industry, and is there enough for me? And gosh, there's thousands of real estate agents out there. In 2019, in the state of Massachusetts, which is one of the smallest states in the United States as far as geography goes, there was over 50,000 properties that moved from one person to another. And that was homes, that was condos, those were multifamily properties, over 50,000. So if you divide that down by what happens in a month or a week or a day, there's plenty of business out there for everyone. It's just, and you, Leo, have a sphere of influence. You know people that I don't, and same thing on this end. And that's what our business is all about, is getting help from those who we know, and then trying to help them with their real estate needs. So there's tons of business out there. I think the last time, this was multiple years ago, I think I did a value calculation as to how many commission dollars probably changed hands. Now, this goes back several years ago. It was something like 2.5 billion, not million, $1 billion in Massachusetts were commissions.
Wow. That's crazy.
So there's a lot of money out there. Our clients pay us an awful lot of money to complete the mission. And, I think that's what certainly our goal is here, is that we've got to provide. It's not about a sign. It's not about a lockbox. It's
Right.
far deeper than that.
Definitely. And to expand on that too, Leif, I think you're definitely right that business is abundant, not only in the real estate industry, but I think in the world. Because if you look at it, certainly in my experience, in my observations in real estate, there are so many different people of different shapes and sizes and different abilities, different personalities, and they all give value to the world. So I
Correct.
think it's important for you as an individual to dig down deep and know what your unique value is and how you can best give it to the world.
Agreed.
Yeah. So speaking of just characteristics, Leif, what are some of the most prevalent characteristics of successful people that you've spoken to, that you've interacted with?
Yep. I think the ones who have really figured out this business and do real well are the agents who understand that we're probably more in the marketing business than we are in the sales business. So expanding that floodgate as wide as it can go. Those are the ones who tend to do really well, because expanding that floodgate, if you look at it that way, they're allowing more people who have real estate needs to come in.
Mm-hmm.
They're attracting their attention. They're asking a friend, they're asking their doctor, they're asking a vendor, hey, do you know someone who's got a real estate need? And again, I'm not trying to be like salesy or anything like that, but there's so many people out there who are not attached to a real estate agent, who have maybe had an experience with a real estate agent, but it was 10 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And they sort of forgot who that person was. And why is that? Because in our industry, typically, we have not been really good at follow-up. So the agents who are really good at follow-up, the agents who are showing up in mediums on a consistent basis, shows that they're in the game, the door's always open, and the business open sign is always up.
Mm-hmm.
And to me, it definitely takes some money, but it's probably less about that, and it's more about consistency, and it's more about organization. And I think probably the other key ingredient to a successful agent is someone who's studied their craft. And I'm not talking about filling out paperwork. That's not studying your craft. It's understanding all the 50 steps in a transaction, and making sure that whether it's a buyer, whether it's a seller, that they understand how I'm going to bring them from step 1 to step 50. And yep, we might have a little bumpy ride in these particular areas, but I'm explaining how I'm going to do it and how I'm going to navigate around it. And to me, it takes a lot of scripting. It's like a good actor or a good actress. When that curtain goes up, and I've used that scenario before, you got to be on, because the director is looking at you like, you better know your lines, and you better, have the right, facial contortions, because that's what you study on. I think the same is in our business, but it has to be genuine and it has to be real.
Right. Yeah. Very well said. And I think what you said earlier, that we're in the marketing business and not sales, I think that's more true now than ever, just because of sort of where the consumer behavior is trending towards. Whereas before, maybe like 20, 30 years ago, people were okay just saying like, oh, hey, I want a screwdriver. I'll go to this guy.
Right.
Whereas now it's like, hey, why should I go to you? Because I see there's 2 bad Yelp reviews, or hey, like, people aren't saying good things about this person, so maybe I'll go to someone else. So I think service is really key in today's world.
I think that explains it perfectly, because I think we're like in sort of a, we're in this sort of this marketing environment. I have to make sure that I've got it on my checklist that when I've represented a buyer, represented a seller, I'm hoping I did a good job. I'm hoping it was pleasant from beginning to end, but I have to allow them to continue to help me in my world, much like I would help them.
Right.
And that is none other than asking them for a testimonial, or asking them for a recommendation, or asking them, hey, could you take 5 of my business cards, or whatever it might be. And if you come across someone at work, or your next door neighbor, or you're at the cookout, or you're at the pool, or you're on vacation, and you come across someone who has a buying or a selling need, that my name comes to mind, because I can help them down at the Cape. I can help them out on the West Coast. I can help them in Europe. I really can. I think the
Yeah.
biggest check that I ever remember seeing on someone who referred a piece of business to someone in another state, because the agent who was referring the piece of business was not licensed in that state, just for a referral, I think it was $28,000.
Wow.
Just for
Yeah.
calling someone and say, I got this person who's thinking of selling. So it's having that kind of mentality. But there is that time, I think, in our life or in our day that we can turn the switch off to.
Mm-hmm.
It doesn't have to be 24 hours, but if we're working
Right.
a solid 6-8 hour day, I mean solid, you can do very well.
Yeah, definitely. And that goes back to what you said, have a planned fun time that you can sort of look towards, right?
Big
So
time.
you can work really, really hard and then look forward to that vacation, down in the Cape or something.
Correct. Agreed.
That's good. And I just wanted to change the gear really quickly, Leif. Just to your experience as a manager, how do you motivate your teammates and foster like a good work environment?
Yeah. Well, I think, again, I don't have all the answers, but I think from my perspective, I have to show up for work.
Mm-hmm.
I have to make sure that all of you know I'm available. I have to show you that if I don't have the answer, I'll find it.
Mm-hmm.
I have to show you as well, I think, as a manager, that I've been there, done that. I've walked in your shoes. I've
Right.
probably been through those scenarios and situations before. I scour stuff. I scour whether it's statistics or articles in the real estate industry and outside the real estate industry to give us a one-up. And I make an assumption. Hey, let me be like the teacher and find it for you. Although I know you can probably find it yourself,
Mm-hmm.
and use it because I think it's useful. And it could be a scheduling thing. It could be, how am I going to get more leads? It could be, Leif, this marketing thing you're talking about, how can I make myself like more prevalent out in society? Do I need a logo? Do I need things like that? I will take things, I don't want to say steal, I will take things or borrow things that other
Right.
professionals, other superstars have done, and I'll tell you what they're doing.
Right.
And I'll tell you what they've done. And they've been challenged, they've made changes, they probably had more failures than successes. And then, like, why reinvent the wheel? So I think me showing up with a positive attitude, a smile on my face, regardless of what's might be happening in my personal life or what happened in the office yesterday, I think is important. There's nothing worse than hanging around someone who's grumpy or always has their door closed and doesn't want to talk to you.
Right. Definitely. And I think that's a great sort of parallel to being a great leader, which I'm sure a lot of the viewers back at home, they're looking to do in the next few years in their jobs or in their communities. So, as you said, Leif, you have to show up and be committed to the team that you're on. You
Right.
have to show them that you know what you're talking about, and also being positive. That's a huge thing. As you mentioned earlier too, positivity is contagious.
Yeah. Even if you got to fake it, actors and actresses, they fake it.
Right.
Even if you got to fake it and you're not having a good day, there's no way a client of ours who is paying us very well, or a buyer who's relying on us to find them the right property in the right community, in the right location, on the right cul-de-sac, whatever it might be, there's nothing worse than you being in a bad mood, which puts them in a bad mood, and then they can't accomplish their goal.
Yeah.
So I guess what I would say is, if someone's just going to be in a bad mood on a Thursday, just stay at home and do something else. Don't disturb someone else's life, and then show up the next day, hopefully sort of purged of that. It's not easy.
Right.
It's not easy, especially in the environment we're in these days, but we're in a people business, and I think we got to show up with a big smile on our face every day.
That's true. And speaking of that too, I think just in terms of the millennial generation or like the current society, I feel like there's a lot of pressure for you to do more, to be more, and to be on all the time. And hey, I mean that's not the reality. And there are ups, there are downs, and I think it's important to realize, hey, like this is a down moment right now. Maybe I'll take a day off, reflect on it, and just take it easy for a day. And then when I'm back up again, then I can go out and be my best self.
Yeah, I think our industry, probably like many that aren't salaried industries, burnout is a common factor. And what does that mean? You could easily work 2 weeks in a row, like every day, and not take a day off, not take much time off because you just scheduled business around your whole life. And I'm not saying that is necessarily bad. I've seen it before. I've experienced it before myself. And it's just not easy to say, look, I just got to tell people I'm not available today. So you have to have a backup plan. You got to have a plan B, because those consumers, when they have a need, they need someone to call them back. They need someone to visit them somewhere. They need someone to give them advice, whatever it might be. So you've got to have a physical backup plan when in the event that you're not available.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. And so we're sort of running out of time right now, Leif. I just want to bring it back up to the surface level. Let's end with a fun question.
Sure.
So if you had to, or if you stop all work for one day, what would you do?
Oh, if I stop work for one day, more likely or not, I'd probably be out on the golf course. But if I stop work permanently, whether it was through my own choice or not, I think like probably a lot of us, I'd love to go the travel route. I want to see what other people are doing in other parts of the world, and not just business wise. I'm not even talking really business.
Right.
So yeah, I got certainly plenty of countries and places on my bucket list. I don't know whether I'll hit all of them, but
Right. What's on the top?
I would say, as strange as this might sound, I would love to take a trip to either Ireland or Scotland and stay in a castle. I mean, there's been quite a few castles that have been converted into hotels. I don't know. It's just something I always, as a little kid, that I wanted to stay in a stone castle and just kind of reminisce 400 or 500 years ago, because I was a history buff as well back in school. Is that, wow, I mean, what were people doing back then? They didn't have phones. They didn't have podcasts. They didn't have Dunkin' Donuts. They didn't have anything. And I think it would be kind of cool to kind of maybe bring myself back to the resolution that we've got it pretty good. We got it pretty good versus the way people lived 300, 400, 500 years ago, even 50 years ago. So I think that'd probably be on my bucket list. Hope I hit that someday.
Yeah. And I think now it's easier than ever, right? I'm pretty sure Airbnb has something similar. Like someone's just renting out their castle or something.
Oh, there's plenty of them. I've already checked them all out. So
yeah, there you go. Well, let me know
everything.
You go. Yeah, that's great. So awesome. Just wanted to summarize what we learned today. We went through a lot of sort of material or ideas as to how you can be your best self during this interesting time of change, of turbulence, of everything. And definitely, once again, if you learned something useful out of today, or if you feel charitable, I'd urge you to donate to the Home for Little Wanderers, today's charity.
It'd be great.
And of course, if you have any questions about what we've covered today, or if you're interested in talking real estate with Leif, Leif, would you mind sharing your contact with the audience?
Sure. I prefer you to call me on my cell, or you can text me, whichever is easiest for you. 508-769-2212. Again, if I'm on the phone a lot, no excuse, but, and I tend to, if I see a phone call coming in, it's not like the old days for me where I click off and go over. To me, that's pretty obnoxious to the person I'm talking to. So in the event that you go into voicemail, just leave me your name and number, reason why you're giving me a buzz, and I always get back. period, I always get back.
Awesome. Well, I'll definitely put that number in the description as well, just so people can get it. And with that being said, is there anything else you would like to add, Leif?
I just say, hey, thanks for, giving me the time. I love sharing this, kind of experiences that I have and that I've had. Do I think getting into the real estate industry right now is a potential good choice for someone? Yeah, it is. It's hard. This is hard work. Although you might have had an experience with a real estate agent where you had to wonder whether they're working or not. I can't remove those experiences someone's had, but this
Right.
is really hard work, but you can do really well. Yeah, you have flexibility in our business, but if you treat it like a regular job, you can do really well financially. And I think probably the last thing I would say is it's a matter of how bad you want it, because you're going to have to work hard in this industry to really do well. It's just a matter of how bad you want it and how much are you willing to devote to it.
Definitely.
I think it's a ripe time. I truly do think it's a ripe time for someone to jump into this industry. We sort of have an aging population of realtors out there. Again, no offense. That's just the reality of it. And the types of consumers coming into our world on the buy and the sell side are ones that might be more attracted to someone who's younger, who has different ways of communicating, who sort of understands the world that they're coming from. So if that sort of makes some sense, but I think would love to talk to anyone, but I thank you for giving me the time today to
Yeah,
share a little bit about my experiences in this world.
definitely. And it's been a pleasure speaking with you, Leif. And to the audience at home too, thank you for tuning in. I hope that you take this time to sort of rethink about your reality and what's going on and what's important to you, and become your best self. So with that being said, Leif, I will sign off, and to the audience back at home, I will catch you all next week. Thank you,
Thanks.
guys.
See ya.
See ya.